Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Whether you're watching live, listening to the podcast, or watching on YouTube, we're so glad that you're here. We are going live, of course. It's what we do here on the Visual Lounge. And we're so grateful for you guys tuning in today. We've got a great guest today. So today, we're going to be talking about customer education. And there's a lot we could talk about customer education. But fortunately, we've got the right person to talk about it with because he has so much great experience. So let me introduce our guest for today. Daniel Quick brings over 20 years of experience designing, learning, delivering training, and building customer education programs. Daniel is responsible for leading industry research, product education, and L&D teams, and is focused on communicating valuable best practices with the broader community. Before joining Thought Industries, Daniel was a game designer and entrepreneur. Most recently, he led customer education at Optimizely, Culture Amp, and Asana. Daniel is passionate about creating exceptional learning experiences and delighting customers. And he's a delightful person, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten to know him a little bit. So if you'll join me, please welcome Daniel Quick to the Visual Lounge. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Matt. It's great to
Hi.
be here. Thank you for having me. It's really awesome to be on your podcast.
Well, it's so glad that I'm so glad to be able to have you here. You know, it's I think we first met at an education event, a customer education event, and it's just been fun watching the work that you're doing. It's fun to get to know you and see all the great things that you're doing. And so, as I've been bringing guests on, your name's been top of the list, and just finding the right opportunity has been really good. So,
Awesome. Yeah. I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna say we've gotten to know each other a little bit more, and turns out we have some things in common, and maybe we'll talk about that, maybe we won't. But yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I love reading people's bios and talking about what they do, but is there anything else as we go into this that we should know about you?
Well, I live in the Bay Area, and I I have two dogs. So you and I were talking about this earlier, and this is one of those one of the great changes of my life really in the last year is that I work from home now, and it's actually kind of a permanent thing for me now. So you may hear my roommates make some noises eventually, but yeah. Other than that, I love education. I love technology. I love games, and really was looking for a career that allowed me to kind of combine all of my interests together, allow me to be creative, allow me to really focus on learning, but incorporate technology and ways to sort of like drive engagement. And so I really kind of landed on this customer education thing, and it was pretty quickly that I realized it was a really awesome career for me. It fit all my interests. So yeah, what can I tell you? It's one of those things like, it took me a while to get here in my career. I've had several different careers, in fact, but I feel like I'm at the right place now.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And we're glad you're here because we're only benefiting from it, like that you've made your path to it. Well, let's start really high level because I think customer education as a term is fairly new. Like I feel like it's been something I've been doing for a long time, but I definitely did not call it customer education. Like way back when I think I was customer engagement manager or something like that. Like there's been lots of names. So kind of at a high level, how would you explain what customer education is to anyone who might listen to this or watch this that's like, well, what is customer education? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I think of customer education as a function to help our customers, and I include prospects in there, or anyone that's really would find value in our product. Prospects are just customers in waiting after all. So to help them really get the most value from our products. And in order to do that, you really not only have to, I think conventional thinking is like, we need to make sure that we have a really great plan to train our customers on how to use the product. Like, what are all the things you need to know in order to like use this particular product? And those are definitely important things to teach customers. But also the other thing I'm really passionate about is just taking a step back and thinking about the customer's job and what job they hired your product to do, and how you can provide education and training to your customers in a way that will build their skills in the role that they have, so that they can get the most value from your product. So it's not just about product training, it's also about building skills and expertise and enabling your customers in their careers.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, personally, because I think that's what we try to do with at TechSmith. But I love that
You should
because
do.
it's that, it's like, yes, of course you need to know how to use the product, but we really want you to be able to be broader than that. So I think it's really good. So for you, Daniel, and I know you've come from different industries, right? Like you've seen different sides of the world and you've seen different companies. For someone to be successful or good at customer education, what are kind of baseline skills that you think they should just have? Because for me, I'm an instructional designer. That's where I did my master's degree in instructional design, but I think I'm biased in that sense. But for you, what kind of skills do you think make for good at customer education people?
So I think above all else, it's really important that you are passionate about learning, that you're passionate about education. And I think that sort of manifests in different ways. Certainly, a lot of people I have interviewed for customer education roles have demonstrated their passion in education either through educational psychology or instructional design. So they have some knowledge of like learning theories, adult learning theories. But I've also seen people demonstrate that through training and training delivery, and really just loving sort of that moment when they're standing in front of people and they're talking about something, and that light bulb moment goes off with people in the audience. Like they're really passionate about that moment. Or I've talked to a lot of people who are teachers, former teachers. So above all else, I just think it's really important that you have a passion and interest and curiosity about learning and what are best practices when it comes to learning. Above that, I think that customer education is really in this unique position of sort of being at the intersection of different functions in a business. You've got the learning thing going on, but you've also got to keep in mind the business as a whole, like the marketing strategy, your customer success strategy, product development. It touches so many different functions, which is one of the reasons why I actually love this career. It's because I'm like working with so many different teams. I get to wear so many different hats. But I do think it calls for someone to have some level of sophistication with business acumen, really sort of understanding how all the different pieces fit together, an ability to understand how to scale different programs. So I think that's a requirement that I also look for as well.
Yeah, and I love that too. That I think one of the things I found when I was just making learning content is it gets kind of like repetitive. It was kind of the same things over and over. So I love that you said that this idea that you're at this intersection, right? Like, because it is there's a relationship to marketing. There's a relationship to your customer success and sales teams. There's a relationship directly to the product even, right? Like those interactions. And I think to me, that's super, super interesting. And I appreciate you pointing that out. But with all of that, there's got to be some kind of big high level challenges that are facing people in customer education right now. And I know we're talking generally right now, and I'm sure, when you talk to your team, there's some very specific things, but I'm kind of just generally here, Daniel. What are some of the big challenges you think customer education professionals are facing right now with making this successful? Because it's interesting. I see there are a couple communities that we're part of. I see like lots of job postings for customer education. And so it looks like, at least from that very narrow lens, it looks like a growing industry, lots of opportunity. But there's a lot of challenges too, because I don't know if everything's set yet. Like, I don't know if anyone's come up like this is the definitive way to do customer education, and there may never be. But I'm just curious from your perspective, key challenges, big challenges you think we're all facing?
Yeah, that was a question I asked a lot of people recently. I had the privilege of interviewing a good 30 or so customer education leaders, and one of the questions I like literally asked these people were, what are some of the biggest challenges facing customer education professionals today? And I heard a number of things, but the thing that I heard over and over again was that there was a real challenge in demonstrating the impact of the work that we do. How do I, how do I connect the dots between designing a learning experience, iterating and improving that experience, conducting some sort of training? How do I connect the dot to those activities and to like the business as a whole, the business metrics, renewals and churns and expansion and product adoption, those kinds of things that would really help convey the impact of my team and of the things that my team is focusing on. And that is a really big challenge. And we can talk a little bit about why that's a challenge if you like. But it's got a lot of important and significant consequences when you have sort of this challenge that I think a lot of us can relate to, where you have, where it's difficult to demonstrate the impact of your work. You have to just work all the harder to make a case for greater investment in your team, to grow your headcount, to grow your portfolio. Not to mention just really getting, other people in your organization really excited about the work that you're doing, which I think is a really critical thing you need to be thinking about, is really evangelizing your work, the work of your team, and getting others really bought into it. Not only so that they understand the impact themselves of your team, but also so that they can, figure out how they can contribute. If they're excited about it, maybe they'll be willing to help out with some article or moderate a discussion or lead a training session. So these are all really important things that I think sometimes get lost in the mix when you have a really difficult time demonstrating the impact of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so you brought up the happy to talk about why, because it does seem like this is an ongoing problem. It's been a problem for a long time. I think a lot of, and not just customer education, but I think a lot of learning professionals, people working internally, people working externally, it's hard to kind of show that value. You have to do it, but like, what's our, it's not an easy answer to all the questions. So from your perspective, Daniel, what have you seen like that either why that's been such a problem, or are there things that people can do? Are there things that like we should be thinking about? Because my guess is it's not a problem you can solve in 5 minutes. Because if it was easy, we'd all just go and solve it. But I am curious about from your perspective in dealing with multiple customer education programs, what you've learned.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a number of things come to mind. First, it's important that when you're setting out to execute your customer education, you really need to have a strategy, and that strategy you need to define the goals of your program, and you need to align them with the objectives of your business, and you need to have an understanding of how your business defines success and how your customers define success. And so one reason why I think people have a challenge is because they may have not thought enough about explicitly how their team is going to focus on initiatives and projects that will directly align to the goals of the business, so that they can more easily connect the dots. And they make it harder for themselves by doing things that are sort of peripherally related to the goals of the business right now. So that's the first thing I will say. The second thing is that there are a lot of confounding variables when it comes to some metrics that are fairly downstream. When you think about renewals, for example, and churn, there are a lot of variables that lead into that. And so, if a lot of people will recommend, and myself included, I strongly recommend this, to take a look at your two different cohorts that have been trained and cohorts who have not been trained, and do a simple correlation between those cohorts and metrics like renewals and churn and product adoption. And you will likely find, as I have every single time I've done this, that there is a significant correlation between training and a healthy customer, a customer that renews, a customer that gives you a good NPS, et cetera. And that's a really wonderful metric to have, but it is, I think we need to acknowledge that it is a correlation. I was sort of like singing at the top of the roof about these correlations at Asana because they were really significant. And Asana, being a very data-driven organization, you know, was kind of lukewarm about that. They were like, well, yeah, but there's a lot of different things. I mean, like, the customer who is more likely to renew is going to be the customer who's going to enroll in the training class, because they're the ones who like really have a problem to solve. They're really enthusiastic about the product. So it's not really since it's not a causal relationship, it could be one way or the other. So um, so I think I think it's really important to have those correlations, and I personally don't feel like you know, we as learning professionals really need to doubt the impact of the work we're doing. I think we all know that this work is incredibly important and even critical to the success of our business. And I think some of us are really lucky to have executive sponsors who also know that. But it's still really important, I think, for us to have ways to really see clear causal relationships between the activities we do to our programs, in our programs, customer education programs, and our business, so that we can, show all the kinds of charts and visual data to really sell that story and get additional investment and get people excited about our program. So I think the data piece is a really important one, and I believe strongly that data it shouldn't be a matter of customer education professionals trying to hunt it down. It should really be up to vendors like Thought Industries to really provide that data for our customers, so that they can more easily understand the impact of what they're doing.
I'm quietly chuckling to myself because of all the things that you were just talking about. These are all conversations I've had inside of TechSmith about, well, I know it's not causation, but a strong correlation, and here's how these things connect, And so I think it's a really great point. And let me ask you this, Daniel, and maybe there's not a good answer, and I don't want you to feel like you have to have a good answer for this. Is if you could magically wave a wand, right? This is kind of a product manager type question, right? If you could magically wave a wand and have one piece of information that would tell you if your customer education program is doing a good job, it's working, is there one that you would like, yes, that's the one I would go after, that's the one I'd want to know?
Well, I mean, the one that there's several that come to mind, and I think it will depend a lot on your customer education strategy. And many programs will focus on one strategy before they can focus on others. Often the first strategy they will focus on is how to create education, often in the form of like knowledge-based articles that will help scale your support team and deflect support tickets. Because as you grow as a business, your support tickets will also grow, and it's really not scalable to just continue to hire support agents to handle those tickets. And so customer education can play a really big role in deflecting those support tickets. So it would be really amazing, for example, to have an understanding of the top, just right in your dashboard, in your learning platform, wherever you're doing your work, to have an understanding of the most common pain points, the most common areas of friction that your customers are facing as they might be categorized by your support ticket program, and to be able to maybe even segment who in your customers, like according to sort of their persona, who is particularly struggling with these issues, and then to create a learning sort of a learning experience, an intervention of some kind, and right all in the same place in your learning platform, send that learning experience to that particular segment, and watch over the next couple weeks the support tickets change. Like really, that you're hoping that category would begin to decrease. You will see other types of pain, but that particular pain will resolve, or at least be minimized somewhat. And you can clearly see, like, okay, that started taking place the moment that I launched this particular intervention, and there's a clear connection here between the work I'm doing and this particular issue in our business. I mean, those are the kinds of of metrics that we should, I think, as our field becomes more sophisticated, and as our technology and the data streams that become more integrated, I think we should expect to see those kinds of clear metrics that help you understand the impact of your work on the business.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, you know, so one of my experiences at TechSmith is I've actually run our support team. I was the manager for the support team for a while. And so I remember that call for help, right? Like, okay, we're not getting more headcount, but we need to deflect some more of these issues because of just the call volume and the chat volume and all those things. And so what a great thing to be looking at. And I love that you said, like, we could basically, there are ways to experiment with that, right? Like figuring that out. So I think that's really
Totally.
a great thing.
Yeah, there's another example that I'm really excited about too, if you don't mind me chatting a little bit more
Yeah.
about this. So then another strategy that's really that a lot of people are probably thinking about in customer education is how to reduce the consumption gap in your product. So there are probably features that you think and are really valuable and can provide a lot of value to your customers. But for whatever reason, your customers really aren't engaging with those features. And so I think it would be really amazing. We're thinking a lot about this in Thought Industries, like how we can leverage all the pieces are there. It's really just about connecting them. So, for example, we use this awesome software called Can Do to provide these in-product dashboards that we can change the content without bothering our developers. And we can promote a video, for example, that tells you all about this feature and how awesome it is and how it's going to really become valuable for you. And we can also promote that to specific segments. We can even run an experiment really to show this to some people, but not to other people on the dashboard. And then we have Heap also hooked up, so we have really deep understanding of product analytics. And we can see, like, for those who, were shown this video, what does product consumption in this particular product feature look like compared to those who didn't. So all of those, like, they're there. It's all the data's there. All the things are in place. It's really, I think, just a matter of bringing them all together and providing a way for. I'm always thinking about autonomy. How can customer education professionals have autonomy to be able to really dig into these issues without all these dependencies on your biz tech team or your data science team or teams that might be like, you're like 20th in line. I'll get to you in a moment. So
Right.
That's what I'm thinking about a lot.
Yeah, well, I love that, and I love the kind of the ideas here, and I think that's probably a key to any good customer education program is a lot of experimenting, a lot of trying things, bringing things together. I feel like I've put more than one program together, just trying to, like, oh, what happens if we can mash these things, get some duct tape out. You brought up using video in that you're kind of on your dashboard, and we are the Visual Lounge after all, so we want to shift a little bit to talk about video. Before we do that, though, there's a question here I want to make sure. I don't know if we'll have a great answer for him, but I want to make sure we're responding to our audience here. And this is over on YouTube. The Right Price Real Estate Group is asking or kind of says at first, I'm trying to set up lesson plans. Is it an education software that works best with Camtasia? Snagit. I'm trying to create a format like our certification courses. So Daniel, and I know you work for a company that makes Thought Industries that have a platform that allow you to deliver courses. So I'm sure you've got some strong opinions about what platform you could potentially use. But there's lots of platforms out there. Thought Industries being one of them. Any thoughts about that question beyond? I don't want to. I want to be careful here. I want to respect that. You work for a company that does this, and I know there's a million. Trust me, I know there's a million competitors or potential other options that you could choose from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the important thing is that that the answer is yes. There are definitely a wide variety of platforms, and for you to leverage and create learning experiences, lessons, courses, micro learnings, and to deliver them in multiple channels. Not just I think conventionally we think about the academy. And the academy is a really important and awesome channel. It's where I really got my start in customer education. An academy is something that usually lives outside of your product and where customers go to enroll in courses, to maybe get certified, to really sort of develop mastery in your product. But I think, as technology is getting more sophisticated, creating these learning experiences in a platform like Thought Industries, we'll see more and more the ability to distribute that content in all sorts of different ways, not just really expect customers to leave your product in order to learn about your product. So, I actually love the idea of Camtasia, like just sort of, I might be like just sort of dreaming here, but like, you're in your learning platform, you want to create a video, like you click the Camtasia button and you sort of like create that video, and then you click the launch this video button, and then you can distribute that video. I just love the idea of technology all coming together. And I think that, it's inevitable, I think, as this industry matures and we collectively as a community become more sophisticated, that we're going to see more and more integrated systems, more and more systems talking to each other, software integrated and talking to each other. Just like you're seeing with Asana right now. There's tons of different, I used to work at Asana, and like Asana's changed a lot and just in the last couple of years. It's really a hub to go, it's integrated with so many different platforms, and you can do all your work right there. And I'm really hoping for a similar experience with learning platforms in the short future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just my answer is that if you want to create that type of an experience, if you want to mimic what we've done with our certifications, go find a platform that's going to allow you to deliver that, and you're going to find a variety depending on what size enterprise, what size group you are. But a lot of them, there's a lot of great options out there. But I love this notion of bringing it into be where your customers are, be where they at that point of need. To me, seems like the most exciting thing is because if they don't know I have an academy or a platform to go look at, and they just ignore it, right? Like they don't know to go look for it. But if it's right there at that point of need, to me that seems like the best option. Help them kind of in the moment. So, well,
definitely, it goes back to one of the key challenges we were talking about. That is another one that I've heard many times, and I think that both you and I can relate to. It's you may have an incredible team creating incredible content, and still have a really big problem in that none of your customers are actually consuming your product. They're not engaging with it for one reason or another. And so I think we need to acknowledge that, we're not doing compliance training here. We don't have managers telling their direct reports, you need to do this training all the time. We're not asking customers to go to school and be like in a classroom and dedicate time to learning. So it's unrealistic for us to expect that customers are going to take time out of their busy schedules to step away from their work and carve out time to learn about this product. I mean, some of them absolutely do. And I think, God bless them. But I really think that in the future, it's really the onus is on us as customer education professionals, and particularly on us as customer education vendors, to really find ways to help customer education professionals deliver that content in the moment of need, so that we're not asking customers to stop what you're doing, go over here and learn about what you're doing, and then come back and do what you're doing. But rather, like, while you're doing this thing, you can learn about this thing as well. It should all be sort of like right there in the moment of need.
Yeah, makes total sense. Well, Daniel, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a video, because I know you've had some interesting experiences that we've talked about a little bit of them. So we'll start kind of high level here first. I'm curious, just generally look, I want to just for our audience, we don't bring guests on because they're necessarily experts at one thing or another thing. We focus on their thing. And I don't know what Daniel's going to say to the answer to this question. So I'm not trying to just like, oh, well, he's going to say all the things we like. But here's the question I really have, Daniel, is I know you use a variety of different tools and have a variety of different methods for putting out customer education and working with your teams to put out customer education. but I'm really curious. What role do you think video has in that toolbox? Because I also don't think video is the only answer here.
Mm.
But I'm curious from your perspective, as someone who's that's not your primary thing. Like of course I talk about video all the time. It's the thing we do, it's text messaging. But I'm really curious from someone who has a much kind of wider variety of tactics and tools that they've used. What specifically speaking of at the top, you talked about jobs to be done. What job does video have to do in customer education in your mind?
Yeah, so you're right that specifically video, is not necessarily my thing. I would say my thing really is like customer education strategy, learning strategies, and Thought Industries developed this customer education playbook, which is a methodology in developing and executing and measuring a customer education strategy. And it's a 12-step methodology, 12-step framework. And one of those steps, step 5, is identifying the optimal format for this education. And so when I think about video, I think about it as as you said, really, it's a tool. It's part of my tool belt. It's one of those formats that I personally really enjoy leveraging, and I have leveraged video in many different ways, in many different programs. I think one of the reasons why I love using video is because I have a very strong bias towards modular content strategies. So I really want to create a piece of content that is super flexible, is super focused on one learning objective, but if not one, then maybe one or two, but it's really, really simple and focused, and is modular enough to be able to use across many different channels. Call this an omni-channel modular content strategy. And so you can use this particular piece of content connect it with other pieces of content in a greater learning path. You can surface it in a social media campaign, or in your marketing channels. You can place it in a support article, embed it in a support article, or even surface it in product in that just-in-time moment. And so video provides a really powerful way to be able to execute a modular content strategy like that. And so I definitely leverage it quite a bit. I usually like to keep videos pretty small. And we use videos in one of two different ways mostly. One, we'll do sort of tutorial videos that really help model procedural knowledge, how to do this particular thing. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that, in a way that might be difficult to convey in an article. So sometimes there's levels of complexity that require you to really show that an animated GIF, for example, won't quite do the trick. And the other way I really like to use video is sort of like explainer videos that really surface the value of something. So we recently did this series at Thought Industries called Feature Spotlight, which is these 2-minute videos that really spotlight a specific feature of Thought Industries, but doesn't actually ever show the product, because we know our product changes and we don't want to have to revisit the video and maintain it and change it every time our product changes. And really the focus isn't on the product. The focus is on the value proposition of this particular feature and how it will help you do a job or solve a problem. And so we use these videos as part of our learning paths in the academy. We put them in our product. That was the videos I've been talking about, it and where we put in our dashboard to close the consumption gap. We feature it on our website as a marketing material, social campaigns. It fits in a lot of different holes. And so I'm always looking for ways to sort of make content, in particular video content, stretch in as many use cases as possible.
Well, I love that because it goes back to those intersections we talked about earlier, right? That these videos that you're making, they obviously clearly have a customer education purpose, but you're able to use it in so many different places. I mean, that takes that one piece of content and just makes it so much more valuable, it seems, because instead of having to figure out, well, what are we going to put on the marketing page? What are we going to put in the product? What are we going to put in the academy? You're making probably, I'm assuming just it's one thing that's just the without even any changes, but repurposed across those different things. So that makes so much sense. And of course, it's so interesting to me that, one challenge when we talked about like challenges and things like that, I think one of the challenges that comes up in my mind, and maybe it's not the biggest one, but especially with software as a service company or SaaS companies, product is always changing. Like even as a company, we have desktop products that we do major releases at this point once a year. And we have, other releases throughout, so minor changes, but big changes happen once a year. And it's like, it's hard to keep up with the content. It's hard to make
It definitely is.
How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it relevant? So I love that idea that you're taking this and you're explaining the benefits of whatever that feature is without having to necessarily, it's not about how do you do it. It's about what it does.
And sometimes it means that we need to create a new piece of content. As we did with many with the feature spotlight videos, which, we had this template. It's got like an intro and an outro, and then we have the music for it. And so it's, so that's definitely something we'll continue to create new feature spotlight videos to really focus on big splashy new features that we launch. But we also, I would encourage, if you don't have the means to, or you think it might slow you down to create a bunch of new videos, take a look at content that already exists and figure out how to potentially repurpose that content. So we as an example, we run this weekly office hours program that started with COVID, just as a way to really help our customers, get more value from our product. It's a weekly hour-long session hosted by a couple people, and they really focus on, during that hour, on how, like, solving a specific problem using our platform. So after we did this for several different weeks, I think like by the time we had like 20 of these different hour-long videos, we really started thinking, gosh, there's just so much content. These are like hour-long pieces of content. What can we do to like really create more, really create this content, create content or use this content in a way that makes it more modular. So we went back through all of these videos and we sliced and diced it, and we created what we call the office hour replay videos, which are really short, super highly focused segments that have an intro and an outro focused on a specific, very, very narrow, specific topic. And now we have like hundreds of those videos that we can pull from that library and make that part of the broader modular content strategy. If we wanted to put that in a learning path, or if we want to put that in a marketing channel, there's lots of ways that you can use that content. And that was already content that's been produced. So we didn't really have to do much. I say not much. It did take quite a bit of time editing that video, but that's something that paid off in many different ways now that we have all those new replay videos.
Yeah, video's never free of work, but it probably saves, it's not like creating all new videos for all those content. Actually, we have an episode of the podcast for anyone that's listening that if you want to learn more about repurposing, Amy Woods from a company called Content 10X talked to us about that very idea. And I love it because I know it's something that's so important, especially when you're making, we do that with this show, right? We'll take this and we'll break out some of the snippets and we'll turn it into a blog post. We'll take this one piece of content, we'll fuel 20 different pieces of content that our marketing team can use that, we can put in very different channels. So I love that. Daniel, you've shared with me a couple of different experiences you've had with video. And one particular is you've talked about the role of talking heads. Would you mind sharing that story of how talking heads have impacted some of your videos in the past? And we'll just caveat that people's experiences may vary, but I just thought it was so interesting to hear that, again, because I love it's about experimentation.
Yeah, definitely. so when I first got started in customer education, I was at Optimizely, and I was I was the manager of our academy and our certification programs. And we had all these courses in our academy, all these learning paths that we were creating, and we were really really excited about the content. But we were always looking for ways to iterate. We actually had a meeting every week called Iterate, with like 5 different exclamation marks, and it was really just about looking at the data, looking at the surveys, and just like tapping into our own intuition and our own expertise to really figure out how we can make this content even better. And at some point we were like, the content sort of like just gets right into the topic. The courses just get right into the topic. Wouldn't it be great if we had if we created these talking head bumper videos for all of our learning paths that really, for all of our courses rather, that really helped the learner understand what this course was about, why this topic is really important, what they're going to learn in this course, and just make it more personable. I mean, you could use like a course detail page with bullet points to do something similar, but we really wanted to kind of serve a couple purposes. We wanted to, thinking about Gagne's first step, we really wanted to like hook the audience and maybe use storytelling as part of this. We wanted to make it more human and more personable. We wanted, and an intro video is also a way for us to be able to set up the topic in a way that's really difficult to do in just like text. And so we shot 2 full days of these video bumpers where this video producer came in, and we set up a little studio, and there were like 4 of us who were narrators for these video bumpers, and we shot them all in 2 days, and there were like I think 40 of them, and just pop them in at the beginning of the course. It's something you can watch before you get started with the course. Also SEO, it's also like something you can find if you search out the course, and it's not actually, you don't actually have to enroll in the course to watch it, because it kind of sets up the course. And what did we find? Well, we actually, not to no surprise, honestly, because I had a really deep intuition about this, but we found a lot more engagement with our courses, a lot more people enrolled in the course after we added these video bumpers. And that was the only change we made, was we just added the video bumpers, and we saw course enrollments go up. So that was a really, I think, strong signal to us that they were working, that they really helped our customers feel like, okay, what is this course? What's it going to help me to do? And maybe we even got them a little excited about the content. Maybe we kind of, I think some of our videos were designed to be like cliffhanger-ish, So yeah, I think it was a real success for us. I love talking head videos, Matt. I think they're really awesome. I always advocate, I'm of the camp that you should think about talking head videos as a way to introduce your courses.
Well, I mean, I think it speaks to so many things that we've talked about on this show and in the TechSmith Academy and stuff, that I think there's a lot of people who that's not, they're like, no, I don't want to be on camera. And it's hard. I get, like, not everyone wants to be on camera, but I love that you were able to have that intuition, and then you were able to put it into practice and to see that spike. And again, results may vary depending on how people do it and set it up. But I think it's so interesting. In fact, I know Jesse just put this in one of the chat, that next week's guest is going to be talking about some of that experience that he's had with, using people and connecting with people and allowing us to, like that reason for hooking people and reasons to give them what you're going to talk about. Because, you set the expectation, and even data that we have says that one of the number one reasons people stop watching videos is because it doesn't feel relevant to them, or they don't think it's relevant. And so I'm imagining this video with you, Daniel, talking about like, here's what we're going to be talking about. Here's why it's so important to know about. And you're doing exactly that, allowing them to see that relevance. So
that's exactly why we did it. Yep, that's exactly why we did it. And if you wanted to know what they look like, actually, I would encourage you all to visit the Optimizely Academy. We designed the Academy at Optimizely to not be behind a sign-in wall. You only have to sign in to take like the exams and earn the certifications, but all the content is free. And you'll see all of our little bumper videos there, so you can watch them if you want.
Yeah, we'll have to go. Yeah, everyone go check out Optimizely's Academy. That would be awesome to check out. I have one more question before we get to our speed round questions, Daniel. And we're going to shift gears just a little bit here, because in your bio, and you and I have talked that you have been a game designer, and I'm just really curious about the game design, that kind of maybe the influence or impact that has had on your thinking about customer education. You know, we hear a lot about gamification, lots of kind of things that you could do. Maybe it's about that. Maybe it's helped in that way. But I'm just from your kind of perspective, has that game design background been applicable to what you do in customer education?
What a great question. I actually, the way I think the answer is yes, maybe. Either my experience in game design has had a really big impact on how I think about customer education, or I have a way of thinking that sort of facilitated game design and learning experience design. Because one thing I will mention is that I tend to think a lot about the end user experience and about how the learner is really experiencing the content, and how engaged are they? Are they feeling bored? Are they feeling like this is super relevant to them? And so I'm just thinking a lot about that end user experience. User experience broadly is really important in when I'm thinking about designing learning. And so that was something that I thought a lot about in designing games as well. We did a lot of experiments in our game design studio around how to make games more engaging, how to keep people from coming back over and over and over again, day after day after day. And we also had to create tutorials. I mean, if you ever want to kind of have a nice sort of a very similar experience to designing training, but not quite, try thinking about how you would design a tutorial for a game. It's a really interesting exercise. So how do you design a tutorial in a way that scaffolds the mechanics of the game, but also gets someone plugged into the story and gets them to come back for day 2 of the game? So all of those experiences, I think, have really contributed to the questions I ask when I design learning is really like, how can I drive more engagement? How can I make this more fun and more delightful? And how can I get learners to want to come back for more? And those are also the metrics that I feel really passionate about too, is like, do customers rate this experience really highly in terms of how satisfied are they? Are they, on average, how many pieces of content is one particular learner consuming? Are they coming back over 30 days period? How often are they coming back? And how does our new traffic compare to returning traffic? So those questions I think are really interesting to me. I think they tap into sort of my game design experience.
Well, just for what it's worth, a lot of the things you said also kind of resonated with me from a video creation standpoint. Like you talked about story and connection. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of parallels going on here between probably just learning game design, video creation that are all really good. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
We're gonna jump into what we call our speed round. These are meant to be quick, fast answers from you, Daniel. Some of them are a little bit more fun. We'll kick it off.
Got my coffee ready.
Our little intro here. Okay, Daniel, you've already talked that you're a game designer, so we're going to nerd here for a second. What is your favorite class to play in Dungeons and Dragons? I know you probably lead the game, you're a dungeon master, but if you get to play, what's your favorite class?
When I play, I really like to play sorcerer. I like the idea, the story elements of being sort of born with power coursing through my blood. And so for whatever reason, I just really am drawn to the sorcerer class.
You got to get that wild magic. Crazy things can happen.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, you
so
need a good DM in order for that to happen. But
oh yes, absolutely. What's your favorite? Again, kind of. We're like I said, we'll have a little fun here first. Favorite strategy game to play? You mentioned to me that you designed a lot of strategy games. So is there one that you look to and it's like this is a strategy game that you just love?
yeah, I mean, I was really into Magic the Gathering for a really long time. I don't actually play it a whole lot anymore, but it played a really big it was a really big influence in the games that I designed. They were collectible card strategy games that were played online. And I think, like, recently I've been more into, in terms of strategy games. I play a game, another digital collectible card game called Hearthstone.
Yeah.
It's one of the few games that my husband loves to play as well, so we play that game together all the time.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is maybe a little tougher one, but what's the next big thing for customer education? What's the one big thing? You don't have to justify or
Yeah.
quantify it. Just
I think that when I think about the one big thing, it's really about being able to, going back to what I was saying earlier, being able to connect the impact of the work that you're doing to the business, being able to distribute your content more broadly into the moment of learning. Those are the really two things that stand out to me the most. Is what, like, I'm particularly thinking about as our industry evolves, that we'll see a lot of movement in those areas.
perfect. So, what's thinking again about customer education? What's one skill everybody working in customer education needs to have?
Um, I don't know if this is a skill or maybe a quality, but I think that if you are not a curious person, and if you don't have the skill to ask the right questions and do sort of discovery, then I think you're going to really have a lot of difficulty in the customer education role. Because learning, is about discovery and is about being curious and asking questions and finding information that answers them. So, I think you have both the quality of curiosity and then the skill of discovery and asking the right questions.
Yeah, another great answer. So maybe one more on the customer education theme. What's the best customer education experience you've had that wasn't with a company you worked for? And if you don't want to name names, that's fine, but you maybe can share just a little piece of that experience. Either way.
Um, okay, sure. I think that a really TechSmith is a really great customer education program.
Let me get out
I
my
really
wallet
like.
right now. I'll Venmo you.
Yeah. It's funny because I do think about, like, the companies that I personally use that have sort of, like, done not just product training but best practices training. So TechSmith is one, Wistia is one, and um, I have, like, great respect for some customer education programs that are sort of revolutionary in terms of how they started thinking about engagement, like Trailhead, for example. But full disclosure, I'm not a big Salesforce guy, and I haven't really needed to, like, dive into Trailhead. So I sort of admire it from afar, from a learning perspective. I admire it, but I haven't really, like, had to learn Salesforce as much.
Yeah,
So
no. Well, first of all, thank you so much for we appreciate if you're putting us up in there with Wistia, and you know, we'll take that as a heartfelt compliment. So thank you. So going to your game design, what's one game mechanic that we should we should learn to use if we're making some kind of customer education?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I talk a lot about, I have this, like, presentation I do on gamification, where I really, my position is that you shouldn't be really thinking about the mechanics, but rather you should be thinking um, about design and about motivation, designing for motivation, and then allowing the mechanics to support the sort of thesis you have around what will best motivate this particular audience. So, you know, I the easy answer would be like, yes, in the world of customer education, if done correctly, there to show progress, a visual sort of indication of progress can be a really powerful way of engaging customers through a learning path. Or when you get to the end, granting some sort of reward, like a badge or something like that, can be very powerful if done strategically. So those are sort of mechanics that come to mind, but even those can fail if you don't really have in mind your motivational strategy at the very outset. So design thinking is something I would encourage you to think about the most before you think about the mechanics.
Perfect. I love that answer, and I'm just glad you didn't say worker placement. The worker placement mechanic might not work so well, but maybe it would. Who knows? Okay, last question, and it's a little bit of a flip here for you. What's a question you'd like to ask me?
Ooh, okay. Here's a question for you. What you guys are in the video business. So I would love to know a little bit about your thoughts on what you think is the best short form video, like animated video or some sort of like. I want to take an action here and like leave this and go watch something that takes me less than 10 minutes to finish and be like, yeah, that was really good.
Gosh, so I mean, I hate to go with the depends, but I think if you're going to think about creating whatever type, I think let the type be dictated by the content and let the type be dictated by what you're trying to accomplish. So for instance, if there's a reason, if it's going to be more lecture style, like maybe animation could be really good with that because then you can do more with it than maybe just a boring talking head, right? But as you talked about, talking head has its place. So I have like from a form factor, I don't know if there's a good answer. Like I think you could. There's so many good answers that you could do. It just so much depends on the content. But let the content really dictate what you're going to do. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
it's like, because from a Techsmith perspective, of course, I'd love to say screen recording. But if you're showing software, you're showing something on your screen, and that makes sense. Absolutely. If you're trying to show something complicated, do something different.
I was wondering, like, is there an animated short that you really like, for example? One that will make me laugh or make me cry.
Okay, animated short. So with 4 kids, I've watched a lot of Pixar. Everything they do is super amazing.
Yeah.
The one that just makes I love the one with the volcano singing. It's a little bit sad, and then you're like, oh,
Okay.
the volcano finds its love. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sure someone on the
Okay.
internet knows it.
I can Google search Pixar animated volcano singing. There's another Pixar one that I really like that was like, I remember it was like a puppy related one that really just like touched my heart.
Yeah.
But I just love puppies. So,
it's longer form, but since we're talking video now and movies, it's animated. If we want animated, it was on Netflix, Miller's versus the Machines. It's about an hour and a half. It's really interesting animation, like obviously computer generated animation. It's a really kind of interesting twist on a family of, kind of just a normal family and their dynamics with kind of, so there's probably some social commentary in there I won't get into because I don't think I necessarily know what it is, but it was just really fun. Like my kid, my youngest is 9, was like, I want to watch this. Like, sure. I'm like getting the phone out, getting ready to do something else. And I ended up putting my phone down, just enjoying a good laugh, like laughing
Awesome.
out loud kind of movie, 90 minutes or so. So it's not short form, but definitely worth taking in.
I'll definitely go watch that. Have you seen Invincible?
Invincible. I don't know if I have because the name's not ringing a bell.
It's another animated series about superheroes. Really, really awesome, but not one that I would recommend you watch with your kids.
Of course. Well, thanks for the warning. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. It is always a pleasure to chat with you. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better, to hear from you and learn from your experiences. If anyone wanted to connect with you or learn more about Thought Industries, either one, where would you want them to go?
Two places. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Daniel Quick's LinkedIn/Daniel Quick. And you can also connect with me on the customer education Slack channel. I hang out there a lot. You can find that at customereducation.org. And if you're part of the community, feel free to send me a message at any time.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, thank you once again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And for everyone that's watching, if you want to hear more great conversations, go check out the podcast. Go watch us on YouTube. Go like, subscribe, leave us comments. You can always email us at thevisuallounge@techsmith.com. We're happy to answer your questions, take suggestions, and we'd love to hear what you think of the show. So with that said, we have a great guest next week, Jonathan Halls. He's Australian. He's worked for the BBC, and he is super knowledgeable about learning science and creating instructional content. And he'll be on, and it's just a wonderful conversation. It's actually, heads up, it's a pre-recording because guess what, guys? I'm actually going to take a vacation after like a year. So we'll see you all next week, and so grateful that you've been here. We'll see you next time.